let's move on now, and this is time for a Startup Central and ET Now exclusive story. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand from our sources that Google has reached out to as many as 15 unicorns and startups in India to try and figure out a solution for the Play Store rules. Google, it had promised to listen, and that's what it is doing. Remember, there had been a furor when Google updated its Play Store policy last month, where it had mandated a 30% gatekeeping fee for all kinds of digital goods and services, including in-app purchases on Android devices. That included education, music, fitness, dating subscription services. If you made in-app purchases to, let's say, buy additional playtime on a gaming app, it got covered. We had seen Indian entrepreneurs get together, protest against it, even knock on the government's doors. Google, since then, has pushed back the launch, or should I say the rollout, of the updated rules from September 2021 to March 2022. But it had promised to listen, and that's exactly what it's doing. We at ET Now exclusively understand from our sources that as many as 15 have been contacted, and these include the likes of IPL title sponsor Dream11, PhonePe, BharatPe, and even Razorpay. We contacted Google, and Google India has confirmed that this exercise has indeed begun. What's very interesting is that the entire process is being spearheaded by the global leadership. So it's top executives of Google in the United States that are scheduling these meetings. We're being told by our sources that the top leadership of Google is joining in on these meetings virtually. It is promising Indian entrepreneurs that they're going to be involved through the entire process. They're listening. They want to know the grievances of the Indian entrepreneurs. They want to try and find a comprehensive solution. Of course, the top executives from Google India are also joining virtually in this meeting. But the point is, it has been escalated all the way to Mountain View, with the top global leadership joining in. We're being told by our sources that the entrepreneurs have asked for a whole host of things, including making a case for the 30% gatekeeping fee being far too high in the Indian context. We're being told they've substantiated this with examples of how global subscription services cost more in mature markets and far less here, and how Indian entrepreneurs are competing with all of that, and their services, their goods are not priced as expensively as other markets, and therefore the 30% gatekeeping fee is far too high. Also, when you buy a digital good or a digital service on your Android device, you go through the Google Play Store, which means that the Play Store also determines the mode of payment. And what we have so far seen is the exclusion of third-party wallets. So we are also being told such a case has been made to Google that third-party wallets should also be included. For example, you don't have a PhonePe right now as a third-party wallet. You don't have Paytm, for example, as a third-party wallet, or even MobiKwik as a third-party wallet as part of the Google Play ecosystem for payments. So let's see if Google will be willing at all to even tweak its global policy. The 30% gatekeeping fee is not just for India, it's a global policy. So I think only time will tell us that, but I'm going to be discussing this and more now with Siddharth Pai, the founding partner at 314 Capital, who's joining us live right here. So, Siddharth, thanks so much for joining us on this Friday's edition of Startup Central. Google, in its blog post, had promised that it's going to be listening to Indian entrepreneurs. It's deeply committed, and over the next few weeks is going to try and arrive at a comprehensive solution. It's walking the talk. It's not just Google India, but top executives from Mountain View who are joining in fact, spearheading and scheduling all of these meetings. If I could get your first reaction to this.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I think first and foremost, this actually underscores how important India is to Google, not just Google India, but to Google worldwide as well. I think outside of the US, India is actually one of the largest destinations for the Google services, be it YouTube, be it Gmail, be it anything else that Google has, and especially Android and the Google Play Store as well. And India is, after all, the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Google doesn't have a very large presence in China, which is actually the second largest And the US, of course, it's a home court advantage over there for Google. So I think what Google's actually realized is the timing and the way in which they've actually put forward this particular message is something that's a little tone deaf, especially to the Indian startup ecosystem, which has been reeling by the fact that there has been a lockdown. Spending powers actually come down considerably. It's taken a large amount of belt tightening from a number of startups as well, and they're looking at new revenue opportunities. And the moment this particular Google tax actually came up, where a number of these startups who actually rely on the Android app store to actually disseminate all their apps, if 30% of all their gross revenue actually goes away to Google, then in that case, it becomes very hard for their entire viability and ability to survive actually goes away to a large extent. So I think the timing of it is something that Google is now most sensitive to, and it actually goes to show that the Google HQ as well is actually going to play in this particular matter, and is going to actually listen to the voice of the Indian startup ecosystem. And I'm sure that there would be an exception for India that will be carved out as part of the entire plan that Google has.
But Siddharth, the question is, and this is the point a lot of the Indian entrepreneurs have been making, that your 30% global policy is far too expensive as a gatekeeping fee in India because it's a very competitive market, or because your purchasing power is lower, that, the subscription service, digital goods are far cheaper. So when you have that 30% gatekeeping fee, it's from their bottom line. It's at their cost, their margins. Do you foresee a situation where Google would be willing to tweak its global policy for India?
I do actually foresee that happening, because if you actually do a comparison between India and some of the other markets that Google actually operates in, if you actually look at the US, you look at Europe, or you look at Japan, or any of the other markets, those countries, the PPP is actually far larger over there. But the thing about India is India has a very large long tail. So it's a larger number of transactions which with a much smaller value that actually comes as part of that as well. So I think Google needs to be sensitive about the policies it has and tailor make those particular policies to the various geographies it actually goes after. And this very same problem is the same problem I foresee that Google will actually face when it comes to Latin America, when it actually comes to Southeast Asia, or when it comes to Africa as well. So I do think that Google needs to have a sort of emerging market policy when it comes to these particular matters, and be sensitive to the fact that a 30% charge at this actually invalidates a large number of business models. And while Google has various monetization avenues as well, I think here instead of going very narrow, they actually need to go far more broad-based, go after the long tail, and to actually reduce the entire take. And once they actually reach that sort of optimum, I think in that case, it would be a win-win situation for both Google as well as a majority of the app developers as well. Because we will see the rise of alternate stores actually coming up, and a number of national governments actually taking Google up to task for the fact that their nascent startup ecosystems may be jeopardized by this particular Google tax coming on board also.
That's right. You have started seeing some action coming in, whether it's from EU. You look at what is also happening, for example, in Australia. All of that is happening. And simultaneously, you're also seeing global giants, whether it's the Spotifys of the world or the Tinder of the world, getting together and saying, we need to talk about advocacy of all apps together. And they're taking up those issues with Apple as well as with Google. In India, you've also seen a lot of entrepreneurs get together. I don't know if they're still as together. I believe there was a WhatsApp group and all of that. And as they say, united we stand, divided we fall. But this is an olive branch of sorts which is being extended by Google. But has the message been made clear that you have to compromise, otherwise it's not going to work? But the fact is, Android has a 97% market share. Where are they going to go?
No, I think so. Most of the Indian app developers are actually very unified in this particular front as well. They're wholly seized by the fact that this 30% Google tax will actually invalidate a large number of their models. And they in fact actually reached out to the Competition Commission of India to state this very fact itself, that Google has 97% of the entire market. It makes it very hard for them to actually go via the alternate route that Google offered, because Google in its blog post as well has said that in case you don't want to conduct your transactions through the Google billing system, you're actually free to actually redirect them to a third-party website and actually complete the transaction over there. But that becomes extremely hard for a number of people who is for the first time, because a number of Indians are actually using the smartphone for the first time in their life. So their digital literacy is actually far lower compared to the peers either in Europe or America or something like that. And even the app developers in India are wholly seized about that. So what they are actually happy at the fact that Google has taken their concerns into consideration. But I think the Indian app development ecosystem as a whole and all Indian startups are going to bargain very hard with Google to make sure that their viability also continues. And they will actually be very firm with Google when it comes to this particular matter to ensure that they do actually take the Indian context into consideration before they actually wholesale garbage their global policies onto the Indian market itself.
My final question to you is this, what we've seen is protests over two issues. One is, of course, the 30% gatekeeping fee, and the second one has to do with the exclusion of third-party mobile wallets, right? Is that something that Google does worldwide as well?
It does.
I'm talking
I
about
think
the
what
wallets
happens. It is wallets are actually more of an emerging market phenomenon. We've seen this happen primarily in Southeast Asia. We've seen this happen in China. We've seen this happen in India as well as Africa as well. In the US and Europe, its wallets aren't actually that much in vogue. And over there as well, their primary modes of payment are usually either going to be PayPal or they're actually going to be the credit card itself. India is actually unique in that regard that we actually do have UPI as well, and a number of startups have actually built their entire business on the back of UPI itself. So the exclusion of UPI actually goes against several government directives as well. If you remember, even the income tax, even the finance minister has also stated that all businesses need to offer a multitude of payment options when it comes to their customers as well, provided they are above 50 crores, of course. So I do believe that the Ministry of Finance is also going to be examining this particular matter. RBI is looking into it. NPCI has its own voice, CCI as well. So it's going to be a combination of the entire Indian nation, the entire regulatory framework, and startups going to be looking at this as well. And to ensure that Google actually takes into consideration the Indian context, because UPI doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And the core of UPI was the fact that it actually became zero cost. It became zero cost for the users, and it's also a very marginal or low cost for the app developers as well. If that equation actually goes away and someone's actually making 30% of the transaction run through UPI, it actually gives them an undue advantage compared to everyone else in that particular market. And these are exactly the kind of things that the regulators take very strongly into consideration. I do believe that Google's also exploring those particular aspects also. So they would need to broad base their payment options as well. Otherwise, it would actually run afoul of several existing Indian regulations also.
Okay, so that is always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us this Friday evening. That's the ET Now exclusive. As many as 15 startups and unicorns contacted by Google, and that too from top executives at Mountain View in the United States from the headquarters. Shows the importance of India. Well, with that, we'll take a short commercial break up. But stay tuned. We've got a lot more lined up for you on the other side. We're going to figure out what 1MG's plan is to stay relevant, competitive with all the big boys entering telemedicine like Relgio and Amazon. We're also going to be figuring out why it is that three-wheelers featuring high for shared mobility players. Stay tuned.